Hello gamers! Welcome back to another free-to-play Ultimate Iron Man Progress video. Want to start things off with a quick GZ to Endo free-to-play on 99 crafting. Next I want to give a big GZ to Teaspoon on 99 fishing. Congrats. Next I want to give a big GZ to Nice Wario on 99 smithing. Congrats, dude. And then finally, I want to give a huge GZ to Asurazoma on 200 mil strength XP. Congrats, dude, that's awesome. So in my last video, I was still here at the Desert Hill Giant spot, slowly approaching 99 attack. I spent a decent amount of the past year here, slowly working on the really big grind of Matt's melees. I don't really consider strength attack or defense to be very different from each other. I sort of count them as all as just the melee skill. And so right here, I had my little stream for 99 attack, which I got a couple months ago. Also, just quick shout out, I do stream on Twitch pretty frequently, like twice a week or so. I also recently bought a face cam for streaming, so you can all see my beautiful face while I get my RuneScape gains in. But after 99 attack, I wanted to take a bit of a break from melees before I got back into it with defense, and so I decided to try to clean up my inventory, use up what I had, and maybe jump into a little bit of crafting and smithing. So first thing I did was ended up using up all my O-board keys, for which I set a pretty good 6-hour record using just the usual melee method that I do. Just in case anybody didn't know, not only does Temple check 6-hour or just 30-hour or whatever records for stealing, they also checked it for other things, including bosses and clues. So if you ever have a big stack of Obor keys or Bri-Fighter keys, I definitely recommend sending a 6-hour. There's like nobody who has put themselves on that record table. Tanner Dino and I are pretty much the only two that have ever done it. So I definitely recommend if you want to climb a leaderboard and have like a top 3 or top 5, top 10 spot really easily, then I definitely recommend checking that out because it's a pretty easy leaderboard to climb, especially for the free-to-play Iron Man. So you'll probably remember from my last video, I had talked about my new plan with instead of telegrabbing for smithing, I was going to switch to ring of forging, which I'm still planning on doing that. But as part of that, it means that I'm not going to be getting 99 magic passively. It means that I'm going to have to actively train a decent bit of magic just to make sure that I get the XP I need. And a big part of that is going to come from combat maging. So you'll remember that I was collecting Chaos Runes and Death Runes from Hill Giants and Obor, and I figured that the best way to use them was going to be at Moss Giants. So I can't remember if I talked about it in my last video, but recently there was a change made to a lot of different NPCs throughout the game in which they were given elemental weaknesses. This essentially means that, when you think about the 4 magic elements, air, water, fire, earth, they essentially looked at like a lot of the lore with a lot of different NPCs and they decided on elemental weaknesses for each of them. So for example, something like an ice giant, which is something made of water ice, is gonna be susceptible to heat in the terms of like fire element. So fire giants were given 100% weakness to fire, and then moss giants were given a 50% weakness to fire. Essentially, what this means is that it gives combat magic at moss giants a pretty big buff in terms of XP rates. And even though ice giants are faster XP per hour in terms of just magic, I figure that moss giants are going to be better because they have a better law and nature rune drop, as well as more big bones per magic XP, so I was going to get a good amount of prey XP as well. And then finally, I still don't have the Bri-Fighter essence, and so I figured I would kill moss giants and then collect some keys and try to get that. It's not something I'm really looking to like complete anytime soon with the collection log, but it would be nice to have. Plus, I still had all the nature runes I planned to superheat after this, so I figured why not try to get it. So yeah, I'm still up in the air about whether or not I wanted to just combat mage or do defensive casting, since at this point I still hadn't trained a lot of my defense XP yet. So in this clip I'm doing defensive casting. It's pretty good XP, but I think going into the future I'm just going to be normal casting because I want to use up all the defense XP I can at Hill Giant still, just because there's so much prey XP to still get. So with the combat runes out of the way, I just have my law runes and nature runes to go. So after a little bit of superheating just to get rid of the nature runes, I figured it was time to get into some Ring of Forging District Return smithing. So if you look at the math for my account for how I'm going to be finishing crafting and smithing, the rest of 99 crafting is going to get me about 800,000-ish smithing XP. And so because of that, I have a couple mil more smithing XP to go doing this Ring of Forging method. It's a pretty slow method, but it's really easy to do. It's pretty easy to AFK, and there's a lot of like downtime, like at the furnace or when you're running back to the anvil. And so I have to do this for a little while. So I'm going to be probably at least doing a good couple hundred hours of this method. If you don't know much about what I'm doing here or how I'm getting Runes of Forging, essentially when they released Craft the Clue 3 a couple years ago, finishing it gave you access to the Varrock Banked Vault, or the Varrock West Banked Vault, which has the Ruby Ring spawn inside. So as long as you complete that, what you can do is you can go to the bank's basement and you can input an emote code which teleports you inside, and then from there you can get your rings and jump out, go right up to the Grand Exchange and make them into Runes of Forging. It's a pretty nice method. Tanner Dina did some testing on this when it had first released. It looks like getting 3 rings at a time was going to be the most efficient in terms of law rune usage, but I figured that I would just get 4 because each of the rings are 250 GP each, and I didn't want to always have to be dropping 250 GP on the ground, so I figured 4 is enough, even if it's a tiny bit slower. This way I'm not wasting GP. And due to my plans of having to afford 99 RC with Cron pages and having to afford 99 magic with fire bolts and moss giants, I want to do as much as I can to save on GP at this point in the game. So this originally was what I was going to be doing for a while. Problem is, Jagex comes out and says they want to rework run energy. So this is something that Jagex has sort of talked about for a couple of years now. Essentially, their thought process is that a lot of players, like brand new players to RuneScape, are making their accounts, logging in. They get off tutorial islands, they play until they run out of run energy, and then they just quit and never come back. Which I don't know how true that is. I'm sure that Jagex has some like actual data to look at for this. But their idea over the years, they'd always talked about it, things like free-to-play agility, things like teleports, or being able to sleep at the in-game inns, or rest at fires to recharge run. They had talked about a bunch of different things, but I guess what they decided on ultimately was to do just a basic run energy rework. So how this is going to work is, I guess that's going to reduce the rate at which run energy depletes, while at the same time increasing the rate at which your run energy increases passively. I don't really know the details of it necessarily. They ran a beta world not too long ago, and according to one of the JMods tweets, they plan on running another one decently soon. But what does this look like for free to play? It essentially means that every method that relies on run energy is likely going to get a buff some point in the next couple months or year or whatever. So this includes methods like smithing, crafting, rune crafting, boneyard prayer, essentially a lot of the really big and long skills. So there's a potential that this is going to save hundreds of hours for maxing a free-to-play Iron Man. So that's obviously pretty big, and with the news of that coming out, I figured it wasn't going to be smart to keep training smithing. I didn't want to, spend a couple hundred hours doing this and keep it running out of run energy. Whereas if I just wait a few months, there's a potential that I'm going to get much faster rates here. So since I didn't want to go back to melees quite yet, the only skill I had left to do that doesn't use up run energy at all is fishing and cooking. So I figured it was time to learn Eerie fishing. So Eerie fishing essentially is the fast free-to-play method. It's always been the method that's the highest XP per hour that free-to-play Ironman can get. Um, Mostly because it's just general like high XP that you're getting per each salmon and trout, and you're getting that XP very quickly. So the idea is that it's three-tick fishing with zero time cooking. This method was actually discovered by a player named Iruri. He was the rank 1 free-to-play hardcore Ironman for a really long time, like ever since hardcore Ironman came out. And then he had played pretty consistently for a few years, but he hasn't logged in a long time. But yeah, so the idea of this method is you use leather to get onto the fishing cycle, and then you stay on that cycle by three-tick fishing. Essentially, when you eat a food item in game, most food items are three-tick actions, so you can eat a fish and then click on the fishing spot, you'll get it every 3 game ticks. And then whenever that fails, you just use leather to get back on. The one tick cooking method, which you have time to do in between fishing cycles, that only works when you have a single raw fish in your inventory. So that's why I only have one at a time and will sometimes drop others. I won't get too much into it in this. I actually ended up making a pretty in-depth video guide on how this method works. I recommend checking that out if you're interested in learning the method. But it's really fun. I had a blast learning this. I sort of knew that I was going to really enjoy Eerie fishing, which is why I actually put off fishing for a while. Because I knew back in the day when I was just doing the lazy 3-tick fish, 2-tick cook method, I knew I was going to eventually want to learn Eerie fishing, and so that's why I stopped at 90 fishing. But yeah, so I ended up blasting through 90 to 99 fishing in just about a month. It was a really quick skill. I bought the feathers, I got through cooking really quickly, and then I ended up doing a little bit of snow leather fishing after it. But something that was cool about this is I sort of got this idea of, what am I going to do after I match this account? Because right now, like, obviously the biggest goal is matching, and I'm not going to turn away from that anytime soon. But I figured that to avoid burning out the moment I do max, I wanted to have like a good post-match goal to start thinking about. And I think that's going to be 200 mil cooking. First of all, it's just smart to train the fast skills first, just because they're the least likely to get devalued compared to some of the other skills in the game, like smithing or crafting, that I would potentially do. And it's really easy. You can have inventory spaces used up for law runes or whatever you might have as well, or bone fragments, any other UIM perma inventory slot. Though I don't think I would want to do it all outright at once, because even with the really fast rates you get, it's still like 2,000 hours to get 200 mil cooking. So I think what I would do is I would buy like 10 mil fishing XP worth of feathers at a time, and if I wanted to keep fishing when I used up the feather stack, I would buy more. If I wanted to switch to another skill like Workout Fire Make or Ogresses or whatever else, then I would just do that. But yeah, it's just kind of a general idea I'm looking out for. But anyway, here are the clips of me getting 99 cooking. Uh, Ended up getting it at a pretty pretty fast rate. And then here's the clip of me getting 99 fishing a little bit later. This is kind of cool. I actually got it alongside Teaspoon, who I had that video going at the start of this video. But yeah, it was a really cool time. There's a couple beast gamers that will fish at the River Lum fishing spots on the total level US Worlds. So if you ever are looking to get into fishing or Eerie fishing, I definitely recommend hopping the world list to see if any players like Beauty or Teaspoon or whoever are still going. So with fishing and cooking out of the way pretty quickly, I still, there wasn't any info on run energy updates coming out. So I figured I really just didn't have a choice but to get back to melees. Which honestly, it'll be good to like get all of combats out of the way, just so I don't have to worry about them anymore. Just so I have the supplies in my inventory to start doing some math on things like magic XP or um, crafting or smithing XP. But yeah, so what I wanted to do before I went back to Hill Giants is I wanted to test out a couple methods now that I had the match DPS with 99 attack and 99 strength. So first thing I did was I actually wanted to give golems a try in the ruins of Camdozel area. So Camdozel's been out for a couple of years. There was some testing that went on like right at the beginning when it first came out, particularly with the golem rune crafting methods. So the idea there is golems, instead of dropping bones or anything, they drop these cores that you can use at the mind and body altar in game, and they give like a lot of runes and a decent amount of rune crafting XP. So the idea is you kill an inventory, or you kill golems until you get an inventory of these cores, and then for the mind golem spot, sorry, for the mind cores, you just run right outside the door, and the mind altar's like right there. The body altar's a little further away, so for those you have to do something like Skull Scepter teleport, or you can Chronicle and then Canoe up to the Bard Village spot, which is also decently close. I ended up trying both, and originally, way back in the day, Romans chapter 12, who's another high level UIM who hasn't played in a while, he sort of thought that Mind Golems are going to be the best for UIMs. Obviously, nothing was ever really going to be as good as Ogresses or Hill Giants or Minotaurs, but when I did my testing, I found that you get a bit more combat XP for about the same runecrafting XP per hour when you do body golems instead. And body golems can actually even be sped up because there's a neat method you can do here where you can use an alt account to wake up the golems to activate them a bit faster. I ended up recording an hour record video using a wake up alt at body golems, and you can get some pretty good. I was getting like just about 60k combat XP per hour. But yeah, it's sort of a neat method. I also wanted to test out the Mind Golem spot too because back in the day, you used to have to sort of run pretty long ways, or you had to run a little bit through the wilderness to get to the Mind Altar. But after Desert Treasure 2 came out, I guess there are some bosses that are like underneath Camdozel, and there's a teleport spot that's like right outside, and people were pretty annoyed that you had to like run sort of a long way around to get inside. So they ended up just like cutting off like a little bit of the ground area outside and making it really, really easy to get to the Mind Altar. Not that it really matters though, the rune crafting portion is actually pretty slow. Or rather, it's pretty quick in terms of the amount of time you spend doing this method. Most of the time you actually just are killing the Mind Golems. But yeah, so as part of this process, you get the best DPS at each of the golems with the Baronite Mace, so I had to go and get all of the pieces to make the mace. And some people were asking about this. So first of all, the fishing sucks. It's just a bad method. There's no world in which the Camdozel fishing method is ever going to be even remotely worth it to anybody. They like hard coded the fishing spot so that you cannot do any tick manipulation whatsoever. And just to get the mace piece, you don't even need to do the cooking or prayer like preparation step. You can just drop all the fish because you just get it from the fishing spot. The mining spot and the mining and smithing part of Camdozel is actually it's sort of fun, and I think it's worth it for level 3 Ultimate Iron Men. The idea is that you can use the Addy pickaxe to two-tick the essence spots, or sorry, the Baronite mining spots, because for the two spots on the wall, there's like two spawns that are next to each other, so you can go back and forth until you mine one deposit, and then you run over to the other spot, and you do that, and then you can just world hop. I have a video of it if you want to check it out, but it's kind of a neat method. I'm eventually gonna have to go back because there's still a couple of clutch and log spots that you get from the smithing part of the area, which I still have to get. So at some point I'll probably do that. And then the golems are just golems. There's probably some math you can do to figure out what golem type is the best thing to kill um, for the like the Baronet Guard, whether it be the mind or the body golems. I think it's called the flog golems. I don't think they're worth it because they don't drop any cores. And even while you're just going for the mace piece, I think it's probably worth it to kill the ones that drop the RC supplies. But yeah, so I ended up doing some testing there, put up some videos if anyone's interested, but ultimately it's not really something I think is worth for ultimates, at least at any kind of high level. It's a neat spot for like new accounts to check out, but I just don't like because prayer is so tied to melees. I really just don't think it's very worth. So now I'm just back at Hill Giants. I am just gonna go ahead and send 99 defense while I'm here, doing the same method as usual. Only difference you'll see is I decided to drop the armor piece and just to stick with the robe top and robe bottom. The 5% prayer method is just so easy and so relaxed here, and I figured that as long as you can survive for 20 minutes, I think that the robes are really good because that way, when you run out of food, or sorry, when you run out of health, you can just minigame telly and then run back, which is just it's super easy to do. Plus, if your prayer lasts much longer than your health, then you can just run back and forth to the Cytherid Abbey. So that's what I'm doing now. Uh, I went ahead and made myself a rune kite shield because I finally got 96 smithing, sort of at the end of my last grind, getting attacked here, and I have the full helm as well, which I ended up making, plus the scimitar. You know how it is. So yeah, I'm gonna be sticking around here for a decent while, doing the strength potions when I get them, and collecting the chaos and death runes, and collecting more of the boss keys. So yeah, getting into the next steps, I guess, of this account, there's gonna be a lot of magic XP math that I'm gonna need to do. I sort of touched on this earlier, but essentially the idea is that I'm gonna get a decent amount of chaos and death runes just from the hill giants, and then I'm gonna be getting a lot of runes from when I use up all the giant keys at Obor. So from there, I'm gonna have to do some math with using up the death runes, and then mostly using up all the chaos runes I get at Moss Giants and Bryophyta. Then I'm gonna likely try to do the math on how much or how many chaos runes I need to buy to finish all my combat maging. Because the goal right now is I don't want to get any over magic XP. I want to get it without wasting any time doing any extra Moss Giants. So generally the math here is that all the nature runes I get are going to be 53 magic XP for superheating. A decent chunk of my law runes are going to be spent doing Falador teleports for Ring of Forging smithing, and then afterwards doing Varrock Southwest and then Falador Furnace crafting. So for each of those, that's going to be 48 magic XP. I am going to be getting a lot more law runes than I need to finish smithing and crafting, so I'm going to have a decent amount of law runes left over for rune crafting, particularly doing Varrock tellies with that. So that's going to be like 35 XP per those. And then, of course, as I kill Moss Giants with the Chaos Runes, I'm going to be getting more Bryo Keys and just more runes in general from the Moss Giants. So I'm going to have some math to do. I'll likely have a spreadsheet at some point to put this all together. But yeah, really the ideal is that sometime during rune crafting, I'm going to use up my very last law rune, and that's going to get me 99 magic. It's probably not going to be that clean, but it's going to be some. I'm going to try to get somewhere pretty close. So that's sort of the goal right now. So that would have been the end of the video, but just yesterday the Jagex Summer Summit happened. So there were a few things from that I figured I'd give my 2 cents on. I was originally watching it because I wanted to see if they were going to mention anything about the run energy rework, but they didn't mention any of that. What they did mention though which I guess was a bit of a surprise. I don't think anybody really saw it coming. Was Jaget's mentioned that they're going to be bringing an ice slash fire giant boss into the game, and that it's going to be pay to play only. So this is actually a bit of a surprise because it was something that the free to play community had expected was going to be like the next free to play boss for a couple of years now, ever since Fighter came out. It really just made a lot of sense because there's multiple ice giant spots within the game, including a wilderness ice giant spot. The Asgardian Ice Dungeon is like a it's a free to play area. Free to players go there. Um, we were expecting just like the general whatever. We were a little shaken up, I guess, after Sturius came out because Sturius was supposed to incorporate a lot of things that the free to play Ice Giant boss would have incorporated, like dodging things falling from the ceiling, like icicles or whatever it is, and like the rat pit down there. But essentially, yeah, I just the idea is that Giants wants to add a couple mechanics to it, and they think that it'll be too complicated for free to players, so they're gonna make it pay to play only. So that's whatever. But there are a few things around that which might still change free to play. One is that they mentioned that like the lore of it was that some fire giants from Karamja had like somehow tunneled into the Asgardian Ice Dungeon, and that's how they're gonna have the boss there and like combine the two. So that potentially brings the idea of fire giants being in the Asgardian Ice Dungeon. Um, they would likely be in like the like skeletal wyvern area, which is like pay to play only, but there is like a non-zero chance that fire giants get added to free to play. If that's the case, then fire giants are pretty popular because they drop the rune scimitar, which obviously is the big free to play item that people grind out 89 smithing for. So that would be interesting if that change were to be made. I wouldn't be personally too upset. The grind for the rune scimitar really isn't that difficult, especially compared to the way that people used to do it back in the day before ogresses and before telegrabbing was much easier. So that's something to look out for. But the bigger thing to watch out is something that they briefly mentioned in that first, the Ice Giant boss, Fire Giant boss thing, whatever, is not going to require keys like Obor and Fighter do now. And secondly, they're going to potentially re-look at the key system. So that's sort of huge because right now the only reason why Hill Giants and potentially Moss Giants are still integrated into the efficient meta is because you kill the bosses and they each drop a shit ton of runes that you can use. Not as much as ogresses like per combat XP, but it's a lot. It's the reason why I'm able to do Hill Giants and still get everything that I need. And so if they remove the necessity for keys, it potentially can like really shake up the entire like free to play combat meta. Because that way you can just camp at the bosses and get all of their really big rune drops or GP drops or other things. So since they talked about that, a few of us in the free to play community are chatting about like what would be efficient. And honestly, it seems like just ranging Bryophyta might become the meta because Bryophyta, it's really easy to take almost no damage per kill. So you can potentially camp there for like hundreds of kills. Maybe not hundreds, but like dozens of kills. Get all of these like more nature runes than you could ever need. You'd also likely get the Bryophyta staff, so that would just save even more nature runes. It would give you all the GP you would ever need. It would give you all the law runes that you'd ever need. And like with the nature runes, it would potentially give you enough that you would never even need to telegrab, which like is a whole thing. It would mean that you could Varrock tele for all of rune crafting, which is potentially pretty crazy. But yeah, so obviously very little info out about this. They said the Ice Giant boss is going to come out in spring, I think. So yeah, definitely something to watch out for. I don't know what's going to happen, but there's a potential for some big shakeups to the meta there, which I don't love because obviously, I don't want free to play to keep getting all these updates. I I just am a little irked that we didn't get the Ice Giant boss, just because it's like something that they talked about for years as being like the next free to play boss. But I sort of understand how with the recent price increase for membership that they don't want to give any content to free to play. They don't want to fuel anybody's desire to not pay membership or not pay like $14 crab meme for the game. So anyway, that's gonna be the end of the video there. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope you catch me on Twitch, and I'll see you next time.